Previous few lectures we have been discussing about the dynamic balancing of rotors. We started with the balancing methods which are available for rigid rotor case, and then we explained one of the method for balancing a flexible rotor, that is modal balancing. In modal balancing we saw that the method is quite cumbersome, in the sense that we need to balance the rotor mode by mode from fundamental mode to the higher mode, and when we are balancing the higher modes, we need to ensure not only we are balancing that particular mode, but also we need to ensure that the lower modes they should not get disturbed because of the correction in the higher modes. So, that makes that particular method quite tedious, and in that particular case we have seen that mainly the balancing which we do, that is based on the observation of the response. When we balance a particular mode, we always look into the response, and some kind of trial and error we need to do in selecting the correction mass. Now, in today's lecture we will be dealing with a more advanced method, that is called that is influence coefficient method. And in this influence coefficient method we already discussed for the rigid rotor case also, but this method is slightly different because once the rotor is having the bending, especially due to the once we are crossing the critical speed, the shaft will deform, and because of that whatever the eccentricity is there in the system, that basically get means in that particular case, the whatever the centrifugal forces are there in the system, that they either they will get decrease or increase along the length of the shaft, depending upon which mode we are considering. So, like we have seen in the flexible mode case, there are nodes in between the shaft length, and in those places we will see the centrifugal force will be minimum, but at antinodal points where the maximum displacements are taking place, the centrifugal force will be more. So, accordingly in this particular case, whatever the concept of the influence coefficient we described earlier will be slightly different, and in this particular case the influence coefficient will depend upon the speed of the rotor, especially at what mode we are operating, and we need to obtain these influence coefficient for all the speed at which we want to operate the rotor. That means, in a particular speed range, if we want to operate the rotor and we want to balance the rotor in that range, we need to obtain first this kind of influence coefficient for those speeds, and then we can able to use that for finding the correction mass. And in this particular case, we as we described in the modal balancing case, that if you want to balance a particular rotor up to nth mode, so that many number of planes are required to balance that. So, that is still valid in the present case, and we will see that through some case study how this method can be illustrated, and that will give more clarity into the method. The overall overview of the lecture is we will be describing the influence coefficient method of for flexible rotor balancing, especially the dynamic balancing of rotor. And in this, apart from the concept of the influence coefficient for flexible rotor, which is slightly different as compared to the previous rigid rotor case, we described these are the terminology we will be using also, that residual unbalance, corrective unbalance in the present analysis. Now, coming to the influence coefficient, especially for the flexible rotor, we can able to see that earlier we defined for rigid rotor in which the deformations are less. As such, the shaft is not getting bent, and whatever the force we are applying, for that case the shaft is getting deformed from its static equilibrium position. So, this is valid for when we are operating the rotor much below the critical speed of the rotor. If we are near the first critical speed, for simply supported rotor case, we expect the shaft will be having deformation like half sine wave. And now, if we want to apply some force here, you can able to see that whatever the deformation further will take place because of this will be slightly different as compared to this, and this will be more clear in this particular case in which we are operating the rotor at around the second critical speed, in which we expect the full sine wave. And now you can able to see there is a node here where the displacement will be 0, and now if the same amount of force we are applying here which we applied here, the deformation will be entirely different. They will be entirely different, and because of this the influence coefficient of the shaft for this particular mode or the speed will be different as compared to this. So, this figure illustrates that how the influence coefficient will be different for a different speed, and especially when we are at different modes. And we need to calculate these influence coefficients for all such speed of operation or all such mode of operation in which we want to operate the rotor. So, for the balancing purpose, let us say we have this is a rotor system in which let us say we have p number of balancing planes. So, that means we want to balance p number of modes, and these balancing plane we have chosen arbitrary here, but even the choice of the balancing plane is important, and obviously that should not be that should not fall in the place where the nodes are present, otherwise whatever the mass will keep on this plane will be ineffective. We can able to choose conveniently the measurement locations also, and measurement location we will see that generally in the actual rotors the measurement will be available at the end of the shafts where the bearings are there. So, wherever bearings are there we will be having access to the rotor, there we can able to measure the response. In very few cases we could able to measure the response in between the span of the rotor, but this particular figure is more general, in which we are assuming that there are, let us say, q number of sensors by which we are measuring the response. And in this analysis we are showing one of the plane, that is YZ plane, but this analysis we can able to on the same line we can able to extend for the other plane, that is XZ plane. Now, once we have defined the balancing plane or the correction plane and the measurement locations along the shaft, now we need to relate the magnitude of the correction mass, that is so once we are keeping the correction mass in these p number of planes, basically they are some kind of force. So, they are giving input to the system. The magnitude of the vibration, that means the output will be measuring at the location of the sensor. So, whatever the response or the magnitude of vibration is there, that is a output for a given input. Those correction mass will be keeping onto the balancing plane, that will be known to us. So, basically we are trying to relate the input and output for this particular case when we have p number of balancing plane and q number of measuring planes. And generally this balancing plane, when we are talking about the flexible mode, it should be greater than 2, and generally we will be having access to the rotor at the ends, from where we can able to remove the material or we can able to add the material in the form of correction mass to balance the rotor. And the number of measuring plane also, as I mentioned, because of practical limitation, generally that is also at the bearing location. That means generally it will be, for a simply supported shaft, we will be having only 2 measuring planes to measure the vibration. But in general, if there are multi support rotor system, then we can have more number of access to the vibration response. Now, let us assume that rotor is having residual unbalance which is distributed along the shaft as Ez. So, a continuous rotor will be having this kind of variation of the unbalance. Now, we are replacing this particular unbalance to equivalent concentrated unbalance, that is P number of unbalances. Basically, we want to find out corresponding to this distributed unbalance which is actually present in the rotor, what is the equivalent of that if we want to keep those in the those correction planes which we have chosen, so that we can able to balance the rotor. So, obviously, this will be approximate because the flexible rotor cannot be balanced perfectly for all the modes. So, we need to limit ourselves to some few modes, and here we have chosen up to Pth mode. So, that many number of planes we have chosen. So, that many number of correction mass we need to find out. So, basically these concentrated unbalance will be unknown to us, which we will be finding through this procedure which we are describing now. So, in this we have, this is unbalance as we defined earlier, which is nothing but mass into eccentricity, and in these planes, the balancing plane, let us say U1, U2, UP, these are the unbalance which we want to find out. So, these are the corrective unbalances which we need to find out. Now, these are the equivalent unbalance corresponding to the distributed unbalance present in the system. Now, we are relating the response, that means the vibration of the rotor, with these unbalances through influence coefficient, as we described earlier, that we can able to relate the displacement and the force with the influence coefficient, and this kind of thing we already discussed for the case of rigid rotor, in which these are the locations, the measuring plane location response, that is Q in number. So, these responses basically we are writing in terms of the in terms of the influence coefficient multiplied by the forces. So, you can able to see that this particular influence coefficient matrix which we have obtained, which is of size Q into P. P is the number of balancing plane and Q is the measuring plane. So, this particular influence coefficient is function of speed, because we already seen that how the influence coefficient changes with speed. So, we are expressing this influence coefficient matrix as function of speed. This responses, obviously, if we change the speed, we expect the response will change with the speed. This is the unbalance. Unbalance is we are defined as mass into eccentricity. So, basically they will not change with speed. Unbalance force will change, but this unbalance will not change with the speed. So, this u is a vector which is not function of speed. So, here we have response and the influence coefficient as function of speed, but this is independent of the speed, because this the previous relation is we have written for one speed. So, now we can have the measurement at number of speeds. So, we can able to vary the rotor speed from maybe omega 1 to omega n in the range of speed in which we want to operate the rotor, and we can able to write the previous equation for that many speeds. And so, we will be having these equations for various speeds. So, that many number of equations we will be having corresponding to these speeds. Those all equations we can able to combine like this. So, now this response, this is not the function of speed. Basically, you can able to see here this is anyway, earlier it was not function of speed. This, the influence coefficient matrix, the size got changed. Now I will be showing the expanded form of this here. So basically this vector, the displacement vector, so this is the displacement vector corresponding to speed 1, and this is at all cube number of measuring planes. This is for speed 2, speed n. So that means first q responses are corresponding to speed 1, this is next is corresponding to speed 2, and the last is corresponding to speed omega n. So you can able to do the size of this is now q, which is one of the set of the measurement for one particular speed, into n cross 1. So this is the total size of the V matrix. Similarly, the influence coefficient, because now they are changing with speed, and earlier the size of the influence coefficient was p into q. So every one is q into p. So you can able to see that now it will be, the size will be q into n into p. So that means q n times into p, because there are n such influence coefficient. So this, the number of rows will be n times as the one of the influence coefficient. So and here we have written in the expanded form. So you can able to see the first, this is corresponding to up to this alpha omega 1 speed, and these influence coefficient corresponding to omega 2, sorry, this is, so some of them I have shown here, and so these are corresponding to the nth speed omega n, and these are for omega r2, this is for omega 1. So the size of these influence coefficients and the arrangement of these displacement vectors are not clear. Now you can able to see that we could able to write these equations for all such possible speed of operation of the rotor speed, and that particular equation now we are using to obtain the unbalance. So basically this particular equation we can able to use to obtain the what is the residual unbalance which are there in the p number of planes. So for this obviously we need to invert this matrix, but this is is not a square matrix, this is a rectangle matrix. So we are following this procedure to make it square. So first, to that particular equation we are multiplying transpose of the alpha matrix both sides. So now you can able to see earlier the size of this matrix was q n into p. So transpose will be p into q. So this will be size of p into p. And now it is a square matrix, and this is written here, this is a p into p. This can be inverted now. So to get u, we need to invert this particular matrix. So we inverted here, and we multiplied by the alpha, this one, and v. So you can able to see, we can able to get the what is the residual unbalance is in p number of planes by this equation. But here at present only the response is known to us, but these influence coefficients are not known. So if we can find out these influence coefficient, the correction mass required in p planes we can able to obtain using this. Now let us see how we can able to obtain these influence coefficient, because now our aim would be to obtain this first, then the correction mass can be obtained. So we will be obtaining this influence coefficient using experimental method, that means using the measurements only. So this is the equation of the previous there is a relation in which we related the the response with the unbalanced force and the influence coefficient. Only difference here is we are keeping a additional trial mass in the plane 1. So, these are residual unbalance which we do not know, we want to find out these, but the procedure which I am explaining here is to obtain the influence coefficient first. If we can get this from the previous equation, we can able to get these unbalanced responses, this residual responses. So, this trial mass we know magnitude and orientation of that. So, we have kept in the first plane, and because of that we expect, and let us say we are operating the rotor at one of the speed, let us say omega 1. So, corresponding to omega 1 we define the influence coefficient like this. So, they are belonging to the superscript is representing that these influence coefficients are corresponding to omega 1 speed, and these responses are also at speed 1, but when the second subscript is representing that there is a change in the response due to the trial mass. So, earlier it was V1 only when the residual unbalance was there. Now, we are keeping additional trial mass. So, we expect that there will be some change in the response, and that particular response we are differentiating here as representing 2 subscript 1 1 2 1. So, the second subscript is representing that we have kept the trial mass in the first plane. So, this is the relation which we had earlier for influence coefficient, but now only thing is this trial mass has been added here. Now, you can able to see, you will go back to the previous equation, this equation. So, basically here V, that is W1 corresponding to this, these are the displacements, and corresponding to this, these are the influence coefficient, and this influence coefficient is same as the subsequent equation I showed. We expect that when we are keeping the trial mass, these influence coefficient will not change. They change only with the speed, but not if we keep some small trial mass, we do not expect that they will change. So, this particular first set of equation, the first set of Q equation of this one, in which we have only the residual unbalances, we are taking that expression and this expression. Basically, we are subtracting the first set of the previous equation with this, and if we subtract it, we will see that this is the response corresponding to the trial mass. This is without trial mass. So, because we have taken only first Q number of equations from that, so we will get these differences. This is common because the influence coefficient is not changing with the trial mass. Here all the residual unbalances will get cancelled because only the trial mass will be left out. So, that means once we are taking the difference of these two equations, one with trial mass and another without trial mass, we will get this equation in which all the residual unbalance will be cancelled out. Now, if we expand this equation, let us say the first equation. So, this will give us the first influence coefficient alpha 1 1 superscript 1 is this divided by TR. So, this influence coefficient can be obtained using this expression. We have measured these responses, both the amplitude and the phase of these responses. Also, trial mass, we know the magnitude of that and at what orientation we have kept. So, this influence coefficient can be obtained from first equation. Similarly, this influence coefficient can be obtained from the second equation. So, if we expand the second equation, most of the term will get cancelled, only this will be remaining. So, we can able to get this influence coefficient. Now, similarly, we can able to obtain all other up to this. So, when we kept the trial mass in the first plane, we saw that we could able to get the first column of this particular influence coefficient for first speed omega 1. So, now in the second step, what we will be doing, we will be keeping the trial mass in the second plane here. Then we expect that we will be getting the influence coefficients corresponding to the second column for the same speed omega 1. Similarly, we can able to go up to nth plane. So, if we keep the trial mass in the nth plane, we will get the influence coefficient of the last column. So, this is the procedure by which we can able to get the influence coefficient for one particular speed. The similar procedure we need to follow for other speed, that means omega 2, omega 3 up to omega n, that is the speed of operation of the rotor. So, and in this, whatever the influence coefficient we are obtaining, that is based on the purely measurements. So, based on measurement we can able to get this influence coefficient. So, once we get this influence coefficient, that means once we obtain this influence coefficient for all the speed, then we can able to get the what is the residual unbalance in p number of plane, and using this expression which is for all the speed, because this is independent of speed. And once we know what is the residual unbalance in p number of plane, we can able to balance the rotor by putting those correction masses just opposite to the residual unbalance in p number of plane. So, like this we can able to do the balancing of the flexible rotor using influence coefficient method. So, okay, how much time? 27 हुआ अभी. Now, we have described the method of influence coefficient for flexible balancing. Now, through some case study, we will try to understand, illustrate this particular method. In this, the influence coefficient method, we observed that the influence coefficient depend upon the speed. So, when we are trying to balance a particular rotor, because we will be having some operating speed of the rotor, and when we want to reach up to that particular operating speed, then we want to traverse several critical speed in between, or sometimes maybe we need to change the speed of the rotor continuously from one speed to another, and in that in between we may encounter some critical speed. So, obviously, in this particular case we can choose the speed at which we want to find out the influence coefficient and how we can able to balance the rotor up to that particular mode. So, it is not necessary that we should try to balance the rotor for all the speed, but whatever the band of speed or the range of speed in which we want to operate the rotor, we should try to balance that one. And in this we have seen that all the calculation of the or the estimation of the influence coefficient, that is purely based on the measurement. So, in this the measurement quality is very important, and once we ensure that, then we can able to get the better unbalance or the balancing of the rotor. Now, through simple case study, we will try to see this particular method in more detail. So, first let us see what is the problem which we are taking. So, for balancing of a flexible rotor, as we have shown in this particular figure, this is a simple rotor in which this is simply supported and conditions are there. In this we are considering the shaft is having distributed mass property, and apart from that there are two rigid discs mounted onto the rotor, onto the shaft. So, in this case, because the shaft is having distributed mass property. So, we will be modeling this particular rotor using finite element method, and in this case basically because we are doing some kind of numerical simulation of the influence coefficient method. So, what we will be doing, we will be obtaining the response of this particular rotor system using the numerical study. So, instead of a experimental setup, we want to illustrate the method using a numerical model. So, generally to test any particular method, sometimes we need to test that particular using numerical model itself as a initial trial, and once we get the testing of the method with the numerical responses, then we can able to apply that thing for the actual experimental response. But in this particular case, we will be showing only using the numerically generated response. With that, we will try to illustrate the method, and as I mentioned, we will be modeling this particular rotor using finite element method, and all the responses which we require that also will be generating with the numerical simulation. And because we need some kind of residual unbalance, so some assumed residual unbalance will be keeping in this disk, and through response then we will try to estimate them. So, we will be showing two case study. One is only the residual unbalance will be keeping in these two disks, and we will try to balance this particular rotor up to the second critical speed, because we have chosen only two planes for balancing. So, this correction mass, this residual unbalance which we will be keeping, that we will be using for generation of the response. But again, re-estimation of these will be doing with the influence coefficient method, and we will try to see whether we can able to balance the rotor up to second mode. In the second case study, we will be extending this method when we have residual unbalance in the shaft also, along with the residual unbalance in these disks. That means, we will be choosing some distributed, that is a residual unbalance in the shaft in a form of sine function, and then we will try to balance that particular rotor up to second speed using these two as balancing plane. So, that will be the second case study, and for illustration always we will be using the numerical responses. So, in this particular rotor, which is flexible and having distributed mass property, even we have tabulated various parameter of the rotor in the table. So, let us see the table. So, in table this is the diameter of the shaft, property of the shaft, that is Young's modulus, shaft and disc, the total length of the shaft, distance between the bearing, distance between two discs, and various other geometry. Apart from that, the mass property of the disc, density of the shaft, because we are considering the distributed mass property of the shaft. So, this will be requiring in finite element formulation of this. These are the trial unbalance. We have seen in the influence coefficient method, we need to keep some trial mass in plane 1, in plane 2, plane 3 alternately. So, this trial mass will be keeping one by one, because we have only two balancing plane and we are aiming to balance up to only second mode. So, we will be keeping this trial mass first in first case in the first plane and then in the second plane. The phase of that is given, the unbalance, at what orientation we should keep. This is the eccentricity of the trial mass on the disc 2. This is actually basically the radial position of the trial mass, because we need to keep at certain radial position. So, that is the eccentricity we are calling, and these are the other geometry of the shaft. The speed range of operation is up to 4000 radians per second, and in this maybe third or fourth critical speed of the rotor system may fall, but we will aim only to balance the rotor up to second critical speed. So this is the eccentricity of the unbalance in the shaft. So this is regarding the residual unbalance, and this is the trial mass. So there are two different things. So this is the residual unbalance basically, and we have two planes, left plane and right plane. So mass in grams of the residual unbalance are given here, their orientation is given, the eccentricity is given here. Now apart from this, some more information regarding the simulation. So we will be generating the response above the second critical speed, and we will be showing the response at a location on the shaft which is 5 centimeter away from the bearing. So near the bearing, whatever the response will be capturing from the finite element formulation, and we will be plotting this to show, to illustrate the influence coefficient method. These are the trial masses which we will be using, which is given in the table also. So now let us come to the finite element formulation of this. So this is a rotor in which so we have divided this into 10 elements, and various nodes and the elements are mentioned here. All geometry of the rotor we know. So with this we can able to obtain the elemental equation for a rotor. So elemental equation of motion for particular element is, so in general we have already obtained earlier, discussed this kind of formulation. For one of the element, typical elemental equation is like this, in which this is the external force, this is the reaction force, and the stiffness matrix, mass matrix, and this is the displacement vector. And this mass and stiffness matrix we derived earlier, which was having this particular form. Now with the help of this representative elemental matrix, we will be writing the actual mass and stiffness matrix for various elements, like for element 1 and 2, which are identical, the mass and stiffness matrix will be of this. The length of the element is this one. Other property of the shaft element we have already given in the table, so that can be used to obtain the mass and stiffness matrix for element 1 and 2 of the shaft. So element 1 and 2 mass and stiffness matrices are like this. Now from the element 3 to 7, that is between two discs, the element is having this length, the mass and stiffness matrix will be like this. And this these are only the corresponding to the shaft, and in this we have not considered this particular inertia, they are 0. So now you can able to see that these are corresponding to the element 3 to 7, and next is from 8 to 10. So from second disc right hand side there are 2 more elements corresponding to that. These are the mass and stiffness matrix, and the disc mass, and that we can able to add either in one of the element. So as we have discussed earlier, the disc mass is the lump mass, so we can able to add that with element 2 in this node, or this particular element this node. So but we need to add this in one of the node. So similarly this side also. So once we have obtained the elemental mass and stiffness matrix of various elements, we can able to assemble them. That assembly procedure we already discussed. Even the bonding condition we can able to apply, the simply supported bonding condition we can able to apply, and then there is the force response can be obtained like this. This also we discussed earlier. Because of the there is a forced vibration and the main forcing is unbalanced, so we expect this omega will be the spin speed of the rotor, and this is the unbalanced force. So this we obtain by by equation of motion of the global equation of motion after application of the boundary condition. So, this equation can be used to obtain the response. So, that means whatever residual unbalance we have chosen, corresponding to that we can able to write the forcing, and then we can able to obtain the response corresponding to various speeds of the rotor system. In the forcing, the vector will be having, because we have two discs only where the this unbalance will be there. So, these are those corresponding forcing terms. Now, we are coming to the generation of the, apart from this we are adding the damping in the system, so that the response are more realistic. So, here we have added the this proportional damping. So, these are the this Rayleigh damping also we described while discussing the finite element analysis of the rotor system. So, this is the mass and stiffness element A naught, and A1 is the Rayleigh's damping factor, which we can able to obtain using this expression, in which this is the damping ratio and these are the natural frequency for a particular mode. So, if we take two different modes, we can able to get the this particular factors like this. So, this we already described. So, I am not describing this in more detail. So, when we were discussing the finite element formulation for the transverse vibration, we described this particular kind of damping. So, using this, in this particular case, for free vibration, if we want to solve this, we found the natural frequency of the system was 149 and 373 radians per second. So, corresponding, because we are trying to balance this particular rotor for two critical speed. So, we will be having that this factor will be calculating corresponding to those particular modes. So, and we have chosen this damping ratio for first mode and second mode like this. Correspondingly, we can able to get this two factors. So, once we got this factor, we can able to generate this damping matrix in terms of the mass and stiffness matrix. So, this also we can able to plug with the, so this is damping matrix for 1 and 2 element, then this is for 4 to 6 and this for 8 to 10. So, these are the damping matrix that also we included in the equation of motion, and for this forced vibration response will change like this. So, this will be the additional term which will be coming because of the damping, or other analysis will remain same. So, now apart from this, we are, because whatever the response we are simulating from the numerical model, they will not be having any noise, but in actual test rig when we take the measurement, we will find that there will be measurement noise. To mimic that, we are adding random noise into the numerically generated response, which will be using for estimation of the residual unbalance. So, this is the procedure in which we have added the random noise. So, if response is, let us say AI, n number of responses are there, and the Ri is a random sequence which is also n in number, and the value of this we have scaled down from minus 0.5 to 0.5, because we can able to generate any random number, we can scale that into this range. So, the noisy response we can able to get B as AI plus 0.01 AI into Ri. So, this 0.01 is corresponding to 1% random noise into the system. If you are adding 2% noise or 3% noise, this factor will change, otherwise this expression will be same. So, this is just to mimic the actual experiment, we added some noise also into the system. Now, we have described the problem completely, also the finite element formulation of that. Now, I will be showing various responses and how we can able to use that for calculating the influence coefficient, and how we can able to re-estimate the residual unbalances which we have used for generating the numerical responses. So, this is the typical plot of unbalanced response in which we have shown this is the amplitude versus speed, and this is the phase versus speed. In this we have changed the speed of the rotor up to beyond the third critical speed. So, this is the third critical speed, first, second and third, and in the phase plot you can able to see there is a change in the phase wherever there is a change in the peaks. Here also these changes are basically because the phase is cyclic. So, if it is 0 here, the 361 will be here. So, basically this line should have been here itself. As such, there is no phase change here. Phase change are only at the critical speed locations. So, this is in one of the, that is the left side, and this is in the other side of the. So, there the rotor response, and we expect the similar critical speed in all the responses. So, in this particular case, we have not considered damping. Also, noise is not added in this particular response, and so you can able to see this for one is for the left measuring plane and another is for the right measuring plane. At two varying locations, we have shown the responses. Similarly, this is the response, similar response, but we have considered the damping, so that you can able to see that because of damping, these peaks are getting blunted slightly, but noise is not there in this particular response. So, initially I am just showing typical response of the system. This is with the damping and some noise also we added. So, you can able to see some haziness of the response, which because of the 3% noise added into the system. And in this this addition of the 5% noise, higher noise, so you can able to see the change of the signal because of the more noise in the system. So, basically this addition of the noise will show what is the effect of this particular noise on to the estimation of the residual unbalance or to balancing of the rotor. So, then we estimated for all these cases what is the correction mass in left plane, not only the magnitude, also the phase. Eccentricity is same for all. So, these we estimated. So, you can able to see this is the estimation for 0 noise. When we are adding the noise, slight change in the estimations are there, but not much, and these estimations if we compare with the assumed one, which is in the next slide. So, you can able to see 5.3 to 86 around. So, 5.53. So, basically these are all 10⁻⁻1 is there in this. So, all are 5.3, 4.3 like this, and so they are matching quite well with the assumed value. So, these are the assumed residual unbalance in left plane and the right plane of the disc, and these are the estimated using the influence coefficient method directly from the responses. So, they are telling quite well. Now, when we comparing the response, this is without correction mass, this is without balancing, this is after balancing. So, whatever the estimated correction mass we calculated, we kept into the balancing plane, and then we found that the response is drastically reducing in both the plane. Here also you can able to see the response is drastically reducing. In all cases, the response or even with the noise, they are reducing. Even we could able to reduce the response at the third critical speed, because in this particular case the residual unbalance was discrete in nature, only at the disc was there. Now, the second case study in which not only the concentrated unbalance, but distributed unbalance was also there, and in this we took the eccentricity variation like this of the unbalance, and we assume that because the shaft was having unbalanced variation something like this, and when we are taking the elements, so we assume that in between the element the variation of the eccentricity is linear, and the amplitude of that particular eccentricity is at two end of the elements are known, which are F1 and F2, and based on the linear variation we could able to get the consistent force factor. This calculation we have shown, the calculation of the consistent force factor, when we discuss the FEM analysis of the transverse vibration. So, I am not repeating this. So, this directly we used in the formulation for calculation of the unbalanced force because of the distributed eccentricity. So, in this particular case we will see that now the distributed and unbalance will be there in all the nodes because of the this one, and this is the typical response. Now, in this particular case we have shown for higher modes also. Similarly, as we discussed various cases of the previous one. So, here there is no damping, and damping is there, but no noise is there. This is the response generated with some noise in the system with the damping, and these are the responses due to the residual unbalance which is there in the system. Then the estimation of the using this responses, we using influence coefficient we did the residual unbalance calculation. So, these are various estimation in for various cases, they are consistent, and these we are obtaining basically in plane left and right. So, basically this is the effective correction mass we are obtaining, not only for the concentrated residual mass, but also for the distributed residual mass over the length of the shaft, and they are consistently similar values are there even at the higher value of their noise. Now, when this is the concentrated one, but apart from this we will be having distributed one, but value of that is less. So, they are deviating around this only. This is the comparison of this is an important plot. So, you can able to see we focus balancing of the two mode, and you can able to see in the distributed case the third mode and higher modes are not getting balanced, only the two second and first and second modes are getting balanced, these are not getting balanced. So, this is with unbalance, this is without balancing and this with balancing. So, first two modes we could able to balance, but higher modes are not getting balanced because we have used the distributed residual unbalance in the system in the form of a spiral. Similar plots we will see for different cases with noise, without noise. So, in every case you can see we could able to balance up to the second mode, but third and higher modes are not getting balanced. Today we described one very advanced flexible rotor balancing method, that is a influence coefficient method. In this particular case we have seen that the influence coefficient changes with speed, especially when we are operating at different modes, the influence coefficient changes. For this case we need to calculate the influence coefficient for all the speed of the range in which we want to balance the rotor, and we saw that this influence coefficient can be estimated purely based on the measurement. Only thing we need to keep the trial masses in various balancing planes which we have chosen, and from that and without trial mass responses, if we take the difference of these two, with that we could able to estimate the influence coefficient, and then these influence coefficient can be used to obtain the residual balances in the discrete planes. So, in this we illustrated the method with two case study. In one case study we chose two balancing plane and only discrete residual unbalance we kept, and we could able to balance the rotor perfectly in this particular case. Second case we considered not only the discrete residual unbalance, but also distributed residual unbalance in the shaft, and in this we focused on balancing second mode up to second mode, and we saw that other modes were not balanced because of the distributed eccentricity in the shaft. So, this is very important observation that if we have discrete residual unbalance, then we can able to balance all the modes of the shaft. But if you are distributed unbalanced, then we could able to balance up to the finite number of modes up to which we are trying to balance the rotor. In subsequent class, we will see some other kind of fault apart from the unbalance, how they can be identified and how they can be corrected. In most common fault is unbalance, but we will see other kind of faults are difficult to remove. It's not like unbalance in which we could able to balance the rotor. So that we will see in the next class.